That night, he thought he was safe. He smiled, changed his phone password mid-dinner, right in front of me. Everyone froze, forks in the air, glasses half raised. But what he didn't know was, I'd already seen everything. And before the dessert even arrived, I turned our anniversary into his downfall. My name is Evelyn. I'm 34 years old, and this is how I turned their betrayal into my blueprint for power. Before I continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. The clink of silverware on china, the soft jazz murmuring from the speakers, the flicker of candlelight bouncing off gold-rimmed wine glasses. You'd think it was a scene from a Hallmark movie, but it wasn't. It was the most expensive dinner I'd ever paid for, and the most satisfying one I'd ever walked out of. We were at a high-end restaurant just outside Charleston, South Carolina, the kind where the waiter wears gloves and your water glass never empties. Our 10th anniversary, double digits, a decade of us. Or so I thought. Friends from my Pilates class were there. His coworkers, a few mutual friends, even his cousin flew in from Tampa. Everyone was dressed to the nines. I wore a black off-shoulder satin dress he once said made me look like I belonged in a Bond film. He wore the same navy suit he wore when he proposed. He looked at me once all night. Just once. And that was when I reached for his phone. You see, his phone kept lighting up. Buzz. Buzz. Soft. Repetitive. Rhythmic. He kept flipping it over, pretending it wasn't important. But I caught the glow. I caught the faint shimmer of a heart emoji in the notification banner, right beside a name I didn't recognize. The kind of name that sticks to your ribs like a bad memory. So I did something I'd never done in our marriage. I reached for it. Gently. Playfully. Like I was teasing. Like I was drunk and flirty. Like a wife who trusts her husband. My nails grazed the screen. The tablecloth brushed against my wrist. It was such an innocent motion that no one thought twice. Until he did. He didn't say a word. He just picked it up and changed the password. Right there. At the table. Mid-bite. You ever hear forks stop in a room? It's not a sound. It's a pause in the air. Like the oxygen itself freezes, waiting to see what happens next. The chatter died so quickly it left an echo. His coworker coughed to break the silence, but even that sounded too loud. My best friend Lauren's eyes widened. His cousin choked on his Chardonnay. The waiter hesitated by the door, holding a tray mid-air like a statue. And me? I just smiled, because what he didn't know was that I'd already seen everything. And tonight wasn't about discovering the truth. It was about delivering it. He leaned in close after that, whispered with a fake chuckle, "You okay, babe?" Like I was the one acting strange. I could smell the wine on his breath. I could see the faint tremor in his hand, the way his fingers tapped against his thigh like a nervous metronome. I nodded, took another sip of champagne, let the bubbles sting the back of my throat as I counted silently. 1, 2, 3. Then I tapped my glass. The gentle clinking brought the room to attention. Some laughed, thinking I was about to toast. Some looked confused. And him? He looked annoyed. Probably thought I was being dramatic. Like always. The dramatic wife with too many emotions, too much to say, too much awareness. I smiled at every single person there. Looked at each face, each set of eyes reflecting the golden light of that room. And then I said, "Before dessert, I have a little something I'd like to show. A walk down memory lane." He froze, because he knew. Deep down, something in his gut told him this wasn't about baby photos or beach trips. I saw it in the way his throat tightened. His Adam's apple bobbed once, hard. The smile he'd been forcing all night slipped just a little. I gestured to the small projector screen behind us. He followed my gaze. The tension built in his jaw. His fingers tightened around the stem of his wine glass until his knuckles went white. He was calculating, running through every possible scenario in his head. Which mistake could surface? Which lie might unravel first? The first image appeared. It was a screenshot. A message from Tanya sent 2 months ago. Last night was unforgettable. When can we do it again? The words appeared in bright white on a black background, projected across the wall like a confession in lights. Gasps. One man dropped his fork. Someone whispered, "Jesus." The collective disbelief in that room was almost theatrical. You could feel people trying not to look at him, but failing miserably. The next slide, a time-stamped hotel receipt, $489.32. Hilton, room 8113. The date overlapped perfectly with the business trip he'd claimed he couldn't reschedule. He once said the conference ran late, that the clients were demanding. Turns out, only one client was demanding. Then came the photos. His arm around her in a blurry bathroom selfie. A menu from a Nashville steakhouse he told me he was too busy to try. Call logs, voicemails, voice notes. The kind of evidence that doesn't scream, it whispers. The kind that builds like a slow leak until the dam gives way. He stood up. Fast. The chair scraped against the floor, loud enough to slice through the room. The wine glass slipped from his hand and shattered. Red liquid splattered across the linen tablecloth like blood stains. He reached for the projector cord, tried to pull the plug, but it was battery-powered. I kept speaking. Calm. Measured. My voice steady enough to cut glass. "I didn't need your password," I said. "I didn't need to go through your phone." I reached into my purse, pulled out my iPad. The glow lit my face. "I just needed the backup you forgot was synced to this." Dead silence. You could hear the hum of the air conditioner, the faint buzz of a neon sign outside. His cousin looked away. Lauren covered her mouth. The server stepped out of the room entirely, probably pretending to check on another table, but really just escaping the fallout. He said nothing, just stood there, frozen. His face flushed, eyes darting to every corner of the room, searching for a lifeline that wasn't coming. I could see him fighting the instinct to defend himself, to say something, anything. But the evidence kept cycling on screen, stripping him of words. And me? I walked over, took off my ring. The gold caught the light for a moment before I set it beside his untouched champagne glass. I remember thinking how quiet that small sound was, the click of metal on crystal, and yet, how final it felt. I didn't need a finale. The room was the finale. The slideshow, the silence, the witnesses, that was enough. The truth was already louder than any words I could have spoken. I turned, adjusted my clutch, and walked out of that candlelit dining room like I was walking off a stage. Because honestly, I was. The air outside hit me like freedom, cool, electric, alive. The valet looked at me curiously when I handed him my ticket, my heels echoing on the stone steps. He asked if I needed help with my coat. I said no. My voice didn't shake. As I waited for my car, I heard faint murmurs from inside. Someone must have turned off the projector. Someone else gasped again. The night breeze carried the faint sound of a wine bottle uncorking. Life going on. Just not for him. When my car pulled up, I slid in, adjusted the rearview mirror, and caught a glimpse of myself. For the first time in a long time, I didn't see a woman trying to hold it together. I saw someone who had. Someone who knew exactly what she was doing. The headlights lit the road ahead. I smiled. Then I drove. I didn't drive home right away. I didn't cry in the parking lot or call someone to pick me up. I sat in my car, rolled down the window, and just listened to the wind brushing past the palm trees. The night felt like velvet, warm, soft, deceptively calm. The same kind of calm that comes after a storm, when the world pretends nothing happened. Charleston nights can be deceiving. Warm, breezy, sweet, with the scent of jasmine and sea salt. You'd think the world was gentle, forgiving. But I'd learned, over the past 6 months, that betrayal has a scent too. It's faint at first, hiding under everything else. Then one day, it fills the room. It smells like cologne you didn't buy, wine on his breath when he says he worked late, a different conditioner on the pillowcase. It's the perfume that lingers when you hug him and realize it isn't yours. I didn't become that woman overnight, the one who syncs backups, checks logs, traces timestamps. I used to roll my eyes at women who did. I used to believe that trust meant ignorance, but silence has a way of sharpening your instincts. It teaches you to read the pauses between words, to study the small lies that hide in daily habits. Back in April, I noticed a small change. It started with the bathroom door. He began locking it. 10 years together, and suddenly, privacy became a rule. He'd laugh when I asked why. Just a new habit, he said, like his new gym routine, like his new cologne, like his sudden preference for white wine after years of drinking whiskey neat. I remember standing outside that locked door, hearing water run and thinking, when did I become someone who feels like a guest in her own home? He started texting with his phone tilted away from me. Little movements, subtle shifts, but each one registered. He started calling me babe more often, not lovingly, but strategically. A shield, a placeholder, a distraction, like he'd forgotten what my name sounded like. Then one evening, his phone pinged while he was in the shower. I was folding laundry in the bedroom, half distracted, half tired, when the screen lit up. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't even curious. But the message appeared like it wanted to be seen. Tanya, can't wait for Chicago next weekend. We weren't going to Chicago. We'd never even talked about Chicago. I stared at the message until the screen went dark, and in that silence, something inside me shifted. Not rage, not sorrow, just clarity. I didn't confront him. Not then. I just started paying attention. iCloud was my silent witness. Years ago, I'd helped him set it up. I'd written his passwords down in a little notebook I kept in the kitchen drawer, the same drawer where I used to keep birthday candles and spare keys. He never unlinked the devices, didn't realize my iPad still mirrored his messages, didn't realize every photo he snapped backed up into a shared folder I'd never closed. Each night, after he fell asleep, I'd sit in the guest room. The hum of the ceiling fan was the only sound. I'd open the iPad, dim the brightness, and scroll. Reading, watching, screenshotting. Sometimes my hands shook. Sometimes I had to take breaks because the words blurred together, but I couldn't stop. I didn't need to imagine anymore. I had evidence. Restaurants, hotels, concert tickets, a florist in Savannah, a necklace I never saw, a receipt for wine I never drank. I saw her handwriting once, a note left on a napkin. You make me feel seen. I traced the letters with my finger, wondering if she'd ever think of me while writing that. Probably not. He once told Tanya, she's sweet, but dull. She doesn't notice anything. I memorized that line, whispered it under my breath like a curse and a promise while making my morning coffee. She's sweet, but dull. I repeated it until it stopped hurting, until it became fuel. So I planned, slowly, methodically. I planned that dinner down to the angle of the chairs, the guest list, the seating, the screen, the surprise. I didn't want chaos. I wanted choreography. Lauren helped. She thought I was being paranoid at first. She said, maybe it's a misunderstanding. But when I showed her the folder, the photos, the receipts, the messages, she went quiet, covered her mouth. Then she whispered, you want me to sit front row? I nodded. She arrived early that night, wearing red lipstick and steady eyes. The kind of friend who doesn't need explanations. The restaurant manager had been skeptical about the slideshow. "We usually don't allow personal presentations during private events," he said, arms crossed. I smiled, handed him an envelope with a check inside. "Just this once," I told him. "It's important." He didn't ask questions after that. Money smooths discomfort. When the night came, I wasn't nervous. I didn't feel like a woman seeking revenge. I felt like a director watching her final rehearsal. Everything was in place. The lighting, the seating, the playlist. He arrived looking sharp, confident, oblivious. Kissed me in front of everyone. The perfect husband. The performance was flawless. "To 10 more years of this," he said. I smiled back, because he had no idea this was the last dinner I'd ever attend by his side. The morning after the dinner, I woke up to 43 messages. The phone buzzed like it had a heartbeat of its own. He called 7 times, left 2 voicemails. In the first, his voice cracked. "Please, Evelyn, can we talk? You misunderstood." Then the second message came hours later. Anger replacing desperation. "You humiliated me in front of my boss. I could lose my promotion." That made me laugh. Not out loud. Just a quiet exhale that tasted like closure. He didn't mention me. Didn't say sorry. Just whined about the damage to his reputation. Typical. I ignored him. Took my time. Made eggs the way I liked them. Runny yolk, buttery edges. Fed my cat, who brushed against my leg like nothing had changed. Sat outside with my coffee and let the sunlight rest on my skin. I'd forgotten what peace felt like. By noon, I had already visited the bank. The accounts were separate. Thankfully. I'd made sure of that months ago. But the joint credit card? Frozen. The utilities in my name? Transferred. Each click of a pen, each signature, felt like erasing a shadow. I emailed the divorce attorney I'd met with 2 weeks earlier. A calm, sharp woman named Janine, who never once asked for explanations. She already had the documentation. We filed electronically by 3 p.m. I watched the confirmation email appear, felt the finality settle in my chest. He showed up at the house around 6. The sun was setting, painting the front porch in gold and crimson. I saw his car pull up from the upstairs window. He looked smaller somehow. Not physically, emotionally, like his arrogance had finally deflated. He banged on the door, called my name. His voice cracked, then rose, begging, cursing, pleading. I didn't open it. Didn't even go near the window. I just stood in the hallway listening to the echo of what used to be love dissolve into noise. Then it went quiet. For a while, I thought he left, but when I looked out from the upstairs window, he was sitting on the porch steps, shoulders slumped, hands clasped, a man who finally understood he'd lost something he couldn't replace. I watched him for a while, not with pleasure, not with pity, just with certainty. He wasn't crying for me. He was mourning the convenience I represented, the stability he'd ruined. And I realized something. It wasn't my love he missed. It was my silence. I let the curtain fall back into place, walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water. The house was still. My cat meowed softly from the living room. I looked around and saw the home for what it was. Mine. Fully. Finally mine. I was done. And more importantly, I was free. He didn't stop calling for days. Not because he wanted me back. No, not really. But because he needed control. He needed to decide the narrative. Men like him don't crumble over losing love. They crumble over losing their audience. The first few voicemails came angry, disbelieving. "You can't just do that to me, Evelyn. You made a fool out of me in front of everyone." His voice cracked between fury and confusion, like he couldn't quite decide whether he wanted to scream or plead. I'd play each message once, then delete it. No reaction. No response. Each silence from me was another door closing, another inch of distance he couldn't undo. By the fourth day, he switched tactics. No more anger. No more shouting through the voicemail speaker. Just a soft, fragile tone that felt rehearsed. I miss you. We can fix this. Let's talk privately. You didn't have to make it public. There it was. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I regret what I did. Just, you didn't have to make it public. That was the truth of it. He wasn't ashamed of betraying our marriage. He was ashamed that I'd stopped protecting him from the consequences. People always talk about infidelity like fire. Loud, destructive, impossible to ignore. But the truth? It's more like mold. Quiet. Growing in the dark. Spreading behind your back until one day, the wall just collapses, and you're left wondering how long it had been eating away at you. He tried reaching out through mutual friends next. Lauren told me. He's asking if I can talk to you for him, she said, rolling her eyes. He's desperate. I told her to tell him nothing. She didn't need the reminder. Loyalty doesn't need instruction. Then he asked his mother to call me, which I expected. The call came in the evening, the same hour she used to ring during holidays. Her voice trembled, gentle but carefully measured. Sweetheart, marriages go through things. You shouldn't destroy your home over a mistake. I let her finish. Let her voice hang in the air, heavy with old-world forgiveness. Then I said quietly, a mistake is a single moment. This was a 13-month relationship. There was silence. I could hear her breathing, could hear the realization sink in like cold water. I didn't know that, she whispered finally. And I believed her, because he'd never tell her the truth. The next day, his boss reached out. Not for gossip, but to schedule a meeting with HR. Apparently, my slideshow had reached beyond the circle of friends and family. The coworker was a subordinate, and suddenly, his career, his precious, curated image, was cracking in the same way our marriage had. Actions echo differently when the room is watching. Meanwhile, I was rebuilding. Not perfectly, not glamorously, just steadily. I sold the house, walked through every room one last time, touching walls I'd once painted, floors we'd once danced on, and felt nothing but relief. I bought a smaller house in Mount Pleasant, closer to the water, with a porch that catches the evening breeze. The realtor said it had character. I said it had peace. I painted the walls myself, off-white, with hints of gold near the window trims. Put lemon candles in every room because the scent felt alive, like sunlight trapped in wax. Bought a new bed. Softer, wider, mine. I learned how to fix a loose hinge, how to change a filter, how to sleep without waiting for a door to open in the dark. The first night I slept there alone, I thought I'd feel lonely. But I didn't. I felt safe. My body sank into the mattress and didn't flinch at the sound of the house settling. For the first time in years, I didn't dream of arguments disguised as conversations. I didn't wake up checking for his shape beside me. I just rested. Some nights, memories tried to sneak in. Our wedding in Savannah. The way he danced terribly but didn't care. Our first road trip to Nashville, when we got caught in a thunderstorm and laughed the whole way home. Movie nights on the sofa. The small, ordinary things that build a life. They arrived like ghosts, familiar and haunting, but each time they faded faster. Betrayal rewrites the past. It changes the color of every moment. You start to see every laugh a little differently. Every I love you a little quieter. Every promise a little further from what it seemed. Eventually, the nostalgia stops aching. It just informs you of how blind you were willing to be. It was Lauren who convinced me to join her for a 4th of July barbecue. I hadn't wanted to. The idea of small talk and forced smiles made me tired before I even left the house. "It's not a date thing," she promised. "Just people, food, fireworks." So I went. I wore jeans and a white tank top. Nothing dramatic, nothing designed to impress. I tied my hair up, brought a bowl of fruit salad, and stood near the fence while everyone laughed around me. It felt strange at first, existing without the shadow of him attached to my name. Then, across the yard, near the grill, a man waved. Not flirtatiously, not expectantly, just kindly. A simple, human hello. He was tall, mid-40s maybe, with kind eyes that didn't linger too long. It startled me. How long it had been since someone looked at me without judgment, pity, or expectation. He didn't ask if I was single. Didn't ask what happened. Didn't dig for details or try to play rescuer. He just said, holding a paper plate and smiling, "Feels good when the wind changes, doesn't it?" I nodded, because somehow, that sentence made sense. It wasn't just weather, it was life, movement, healing disguised as small talk. We didn't exchange numbers, didn't promise to meet again. It was just a reminder that life is still generous, even after it breaks your heart. A week later, the divorce papers were processed. He tried to contest them, tried to stall, to drag it out, as if delay could change the outcome, but the evidence was airtight. And the irony? The prenup he'd once insisted on to protect his assets suddenly worked in my favor. His lawyer's voice had been tight with discomfort. "I'm afraid she's entitled to everything in her name." He had to leave with what he came with. I left with everything I built. We finalized the divorce at the Charleston County Courthouse. The building smelled faintly of disinfectant and old paper. I wore a navy dress. Simple, clean. No jewelry, no symbols, just composure. When the judge signed the last page, the sound of the stamp hitting the paper was sharper than I expected. It was done. Legally, officially, emotionally, it was done. He waited outside afterward, leaning against the wall near the steps. He looked smaller than I remembered. The confidence he once wore like armor was gone. He held a manila folder, maybe out of habit, like it could still give him purpose. He said quietly, without meeting my eyes, "I don't know who I am without you." I studied him for a long moment. Then I answered with the only truth left to give. "You never bothered to find out who I was with you." He nodded. Once. Tears clung to his lashes but never fell. I turned before he could say another word. I didn't cry, not because I didn't feel, but because I already had. Months ago, alone in silence while the betrayal took shape. What was left now wasn't sadness. It was peace. The kind that comes after you've stopped bargaining with pain. When I walked away, it wasn't dramatic. No storming off. No turning back for one last look. Just one foot in front of the other. Steady. Certain. My heels clicked softly against the courthouse steps. Each sound felt like punctuation at the end of a long, brutal sentence. As I reached my car, the wind picked up. Warm. Salt-tinged. Familiar. I stood there for a moment, eyes closed, letting it run through my hair, listening to the faint hum of traffic, the faraway cry of seagulls. Life was still happening, all around me, unapologetically moving forward. And I realized something. I didn't expose him to win. I exposed him to stop losing myself. Some betrayals don't leave bruises, just silence. And sometimes, silence becomes strength. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.